I'm Janey Brown. I have been a performer for about 20 years, singing, and I've also been a coach for about 15 years. I've led movement and mindset primarily to professional athletes and aspiring coaches across North America. I've led over 600 hours in master coaching and teacher trainings for yoga instructors across North America, and have done 2 of Blue Matters trainings, which I am now co-leading with Aaron and Elizabeth. Our next one is in November, which is super exciting. So I've been around the block. You're in good hands, and I'm really excited to give this workshop today on what I like to call the M3. It's music, movement, and mindset, and not necessarily in that order. And these are resilience methods that I use every single day to manage my mental health. And they're not the only resilience methods that you can use. And, you know, everybody has their own sort of method, and it's, you know, a magnitude really of methods that you need in order to manage your mental health on a regular basis. So I'm not suggesting that these are the answers to your life. These are just tools that I have found to be the most profoundly influential on managing my mental health when I use them consistently and when I use them every day. And so I'm going to go over these methods for mental health with you and have this in-depth conversation, you know, around how you can use them if you want to. So we'll start with movement. This one is sort of the most obvious, I think, at this point. Most of us are on board with the benefits of movement. I mean, you know, increasing endorphins and energy, and you can sweat out toxins by doing movement and certain types of fitness. You can burn off negative energy and balance the nervous system and hormones and whatnot. So those are more the obvious components around why it's a good idea to do movement. But I'm gonna kind of zero in on things that maybe we don't talk about as often. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is this idea of attaching a motive to your movement. When you don't have the awareness of providing your body with the movement that it needs, it can actually turn movement into a punishment instead of a privilege, which it is. So, for example, if you need to recover or you need gentle stretching because you crushed, you know, some intense workouts all week long, then perhaps what you need to do is yoga, or foam rolling, or, you know, sticking a lacrosse ball in different areas of the body to release tension. If what you really need is a gentle, relaxing movement, and what you do is you go out and you crush a hardcore long distance run or lift really, really, really heavy, what you may end up doing is punishing your body, and that's not what movement is meant for. Movement is a privilege. So what I'm suggesting is that if you intentionally attune with your body and attune with your mind and attune with your needs before you engage in movement for the day, you can create this sense of joy and happiness. It doesn't always have to be such an aggressive grind. So attaching motives behind your movement can really, really help find that privilege and find that joy and find that motivation in movement versus this dread and this feeling of, oh, I don't want to work out today, and so I'm just going to sit on the couch instead. So attaching motives to your movement is absolutely critical, and it can also go the opposite way. Let's say you have a ton of pent-up energy, and for whatever reason you decide that you need to do a 31-day yoga challenge, and so it's got to be yoga. It's like, well, maybe what you really need is actually a really hardcore sprint or leg day or something that allows you to expel this anxiety and tension that's built up inside of you. Only you will know what's right for you depending on how you're feeling day to day and moment to moment. So it is up to you to find that self-awareness, and then from there decide what the motive behind the movement will be for you. But there are a lot of options, and it is important to tie those motives so that it doesn't become a punishment. A lot of people use movement as a punishment, you know, for that thing they regret eating, and or just to feel more worthy, you know, to keep up with society and what everyone else is doing. But it can be really, really fun, and it can be inspiring and almost consistently motivating if you're attaching motives to movement and if you're doing things that you genuinely love. And ideas could be literally going for a walk down by the water. I mean, luckily our government right now is allowing us to walk outside and run outside and bike outside and rollerblade outside, so long as we're staying away from people. So I mean, I say capitalize on those privileges still, and allow yourself to get outside and just do things that you love. Dancing in front of the mirror is another option. Any type of home workout that involves calisthenics like yoga and Pilates. You know, these are all pretty great sort of simple and joyful movement options that you can include in your life. I like to always too, this is something I always think about with movement, is like, what did I, you know, when I was a kid and I didn't have sort of like these expectations of myself, and I didn't have, you know, this regimen, and I just moved because that's who I was. Like, what would I do? What were the activities that I just genuinely enjoyed because that was living to me, right? And when you can think about that for yourself, you might come up with all kinds of ideas that used to make you feel happy by way of movement, but you've kind of like, I don't know, let it go because maybe it doesn't give you the same aesthetics that you're looking for. I'm not sure, but we kind of like let go of these joyful things that are natural to us. And sometimes just getting back to like, what did I do intuitively and instinctively as a kid? Sometimes that can teach us a world of information. So that's sort of what I have to say about movement. It's the shortest sort of component of this workshop, and it's mainly because I think we all have a plethora of information on why movement is so beneficial and what we can do. But I did want to touch on sort of specifying how you can capitalize on the best type of movement for you, which will change day to day and moment to moment. So motives for your movement so that they can stay a privilege and not a punishment. The next thing that I include every single day as a resilience method for my mental health is music. And this is probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about because I am a singer, as I said earlier. And music is really, really powerful for our emotional health. Just like the food we consume affects our biochemistry, the music that we listen to affects our mood. And there's actually a quote here that I stumbled across recently. I'm just going to read it to you. There is a considerable scientific rationale to support the use of music to enhance immunity via its powerful influence on emotions. Music's ability to alter mood and emotional state has long been known experientially, and more recently has been scientifically documented. Now, that was actually published in 1999 by Roland McCready, who is the Heart Math Institute Research Director. And for anybody that doesn't know about Heart Math, it's an amazing scientific lab that researches the heart's electromagnetic field and the nervous system and how the heart affects the brain and thus mental health. So I definitely recommend looking into Heart Math. That's all I'll say about that. But that quote, which was published several years ago in 1999, even then they were starting to realize how powerful music is on affecting the mood. So I really want to talk about that and sort of break down why that might be something that you want to pay more close attention to. So the benefits of music, I mean, nourishing the emotional body, which we sort of just touched on, connecting to our spirituality. When we're not in touch with our, you know, our internal self, our emotional state and our mental state, it's very, very hard to be in touch with our spirituality. So getting in touch with our spirituality, it motivates us, it can motivate us during a hard sweat, and it can help us unwind and recover and send us into a meditative state. So it greatly affects these different states that we're constantly fluctuating between throughout a day and throughout our week. So let me break down a little bit more clearly why it's imperative that we're intentional with the music that we listen to. So if we're listening to a song with really negative lyrics and that song gets stuck in our head, it essentially becomes a mantra that we repeat over and over again, contributing to our mindset and our thoughts. Now, we understand that thoughts, long-term, repetitive thoughts that are the same, create our beliefs. And then those neurological pathways that have created a belief influences our feelings, aka our mood. And when our feelings are influenced, that, you know, creates the way that we behave or influences the way we behave. And our behaviors are our actions, and our actions then start to construct this physical reality around us. So if thoughts lead to beliefs, and beliefs lead to feelings, and feelings lead to behaviors, and behaviors lead to actions, and actions lead to reality, then we might want to consider being really intentional with the thoughts that can stem from lyrics with music. And music, music melodically can change our mood and affect our brain waves in one way, but then lyrics and sort of what gets trapped in a memory loop in our brain can affect our mood in another way. I'm specifically focusing on the lyrics right now because the science of sound and how that affects our brainwaves melodically is a whole other conversation. But what I'm suggesting is pay attention to the lyrics that are in the songs that you're listening to. I would go a step further and say be intentional with all of the media that you consume. What's the TV show that you're binge watching right now? What are the movies that you're starting to gravitate towards? Are they depressing? Does it make you feel sort of trapped? Like, is it Orange is the New Black and all you're seeing is everyone stay in jail every single day, repeating the same patterns and, with all this kind of drama? I'm not saying that it's not a great TV show. I'm just saying that if you're prone to being influenced by the media that you consume, which we all are, you want to pay very close attention to how these TV shows and movies and how these lyrics are making you feel and what they're making you think about yourself. This also goes for the people that we follow on Instagram. Whether it be friends or whether it be people that we don't know, we are scrolling. A lot of us are. We are scrolling and we're doing it mindlessly. And the feelings that come up from seeing certain posts or media or messages or whatever often get overlooked. Like, we have these feelings about what it is that we're watching or seeing or observing, and then we keep scrolling, and that feeling that triggered kind of a chain reaction within us just kind of, it's active inside of us, but we're not aware of it. And it can kind of, create this negative spiral that's kind of going around and around in the background while we're continuing our life. So once again, I come back to self-awareness. Like, if, you're going to be on social media, which a lot of us are, I certainly am, probably more than I'd like to admit, try to do it mindfully, try to do it with intention, try to observe or catch when, a person or a post triggers you in a way that doesn't make you feel good. So yeah, that's what I have to say about media and music. Just to refresh, the reason that I've chosen these three methods to share with you today, this music, movement, and mindset, and not in that order, is because I believe that each of those pillars touch on the physical, the emotional, and the mental dispositions. So physical is obviously connected to movement. Emotional is connected to music, and we just covered why. And then mental is connected to mindset. And mindset is a very broad term, and I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit so that you can get a better understanding of what mindset is and what encompasses it. But those three pillars kind of, for me, allow this care for those three dispositions, the mental, physical, and emotional. And so that's why I like to include them every day. But just a reminder, these are not answers to your life. They're not be all end alls. There's many mental health resilience strategies that are available to us. I have many more that I use and that I talk about, but today I'm just covering these three. So we went over, the physical benefits of movement and sort of how to create intention around movement. We went over music, how it affects us emotionally, and how to create intention with the lyrics that we're listening to. And now we're going to move into mindset. If there's any questions, you can include it in the chat, and I will get to your questions at the end. Okay, so moving into mindset. While movement brings pleasure and health to the physical body, and music affects the mood and the emotions, as we just talked about, engaging in different mindset exercises can help us manage our mental health. It helps us release anxieties and worries, build self-awareness, goal setting, cultivating optimistic perspectives. These are sort of some of the benefits of the tools that I'm going to offer today under this mindset category. So mindset can kind of mean anything. It's related to where, like, the disposition that your mind and your mental patterns are in at any given moment. And so the tools that I'm offering today are reflective of how you can put your mind in a state that's optimal for you, and that creates optimistic thinking patterns versus negative ones. So there are many mindset tools. The two I'm going to talk about today are journaling and meditation. And I'm going to give you a few different journaling activities that you can do and a few different meditation categories that you can think about. So we'll start with journaling. So two huge benefits with freehand journaling. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of morning pages, but essentially that activity suggests that you sit down with a pen and paper with no distractions, and you literally just freestyle write. And basically, like, anything that comes to your mind, it can be garbage. It doesn't have to be creative. You don't have to produce something magnificent. This isn't something that necessarily you're going to show anybody. It's just a freestyle stream of consciousness that allows you to dump and offload whatever mental thoughts are ricocheting in your skull and just trap it on the page. That's the idea of morning pages. That's the idea of, writing in this freestyle manner to cultivate self-discovery and self-awareness. What also happens within morning pages is sometimes you start confessing things that you feel guilty about, things that you feel ashamed about, things that you don't want to admit to anyone else. And what can happen when you're starting to address these feelings of shame and these feelings of guilt is that you're actually kind of cutting their power in half. If you've ever heard Janey Brown talk about shame, which she talks about it a lot because she's a PhD vulnerability researcher, she talks about this idea that if you put shame in a petri dish, one with compassion and another petri dish with silence, secrecy, and judgment, the one in the dish where there's compassion, the shame will die. And the one in the petri dish where there's silence, secrecy, and judgment, the shame will start to grow. And so by you admitting to yourself, no one else, you admitting to yourself, you, sort of owning and acknowledging to yourself the shame and the guilt that you might be carrying, or the fears, that can actually start to allow you to build compassion and start allowing you to, for the shame to not have such a grip on you. Obviously, the next step would be being able to share it with a human being that can show you, that can mirror compassion back to you. And that would be someone that has earned the right to hear your story, as Janey Brown says. But anyway, it might feel overwhelming to share it with someone, these secrets that you're holding on to. And so confessions and freestyle writing can be a good starting point in releasing that. And same with resentment. So this is a very sort of, I'm running quite quickly through the benefits of morning pages. There's a lot of information about morning pages. This is an activity that has been circulating for a long, long time. It's not my idea, but it is incredibly powerful and has saved lives. So that's morning pages. Another journaling activity that I'm sure you are aware of by now is practicing gratitude. Gratitude can be practiced literally by jotting down the things that you're grateful for. I am grateful for breath. I am grateful for the fact that my body can move whenever I tell it to. All I have to do is think about moving my hand and it just moves, right? I am grateful for the fact that I have a warm house or I have a bed. Like, it doesn't matter what you're grateful for, but just starting to kind of rhyme off the things that you're grateful for. And I like to put I am grateful for before every single thing that I list, because then again, it starts to create this mantra, this neurological pathway that causes you to think about that. Like, it's a mantra. It's like lyrics, getting lyrics stuck in your head, which we talked about earlier. So I like to actually physically write out I am grateful for and just create that more concrete neural pathway, and then write the thing that I'm grateful for. But the amazing thing about practicing gratitude is that when we open our minds to be grateful, we develop a larger capacity of feeling grateful. It's sort of like, in essence, when we focus on this thing that we're grateful for, we kind of relive the memory that we're grateful for, or we refocus on the object or whatever it is, and we kind of relive the power of it. It sort of like amplifies the blessing by focusing on how awesome it is. So it's a pretty incredible tool. But from a scientific standpoint, it also helps us redirect our thought energy onto optimistic neurological pathways. So like, I'm not suggesting, this is a bit of a disclaimer, I'm not suggesting that you can gratitude your way out of an anxiety attack. I'm not suggesting that you can gratitude your way out of depression, but I am suggesting that you can have both at the same time. You can be depressed and you can start to practice thinking about the things that are meaningful to you and that you feel good about. You can hold space for your depression and honor it at the same time as focusing on a different way of thinking about your world. There is someone out there who I will not name. He's a very, very, very famous speaker. And he says that you can't be fearful and grateful at the same time. And I entirely disagree with that. I think that you can be fearful and you can practice gratitude at the same time. It's and both, not either or. You're a whole person with darkness and light. And my perspective is finding the capacity to hold space for both at once versus trying to get rid of one with the other. So I'm suggesting that gratitude is powerful because it allows us to carve out these optimistic neurological pathways and just allows us to start thinking differently. And we can do that in the presence of any state. It requires us applying our focus to that area. So we covered confessions to cut shame in half and self-discoveries with morning pages. Morning pages can also broaden self-awareness. Like even if you're just start with a question, like, what am I feeling today? What do I need today? Like ask yourself these questions and then write a letter to yourself. And then we talked about gratitude to shift to an optimistic mindset. So now I'm going to move on to meditation. And guys, if you have questions, please ask away. I can also unmute you. If you'd rather just ask it on video, just type it in, go like, I have a question, and I will address you after the workshop so that we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Okay, so moving on to meditation. Meditation is an extremely powerful tool to shift mindset. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. These are 3 examples that I use most often in my Fierce Academy programming with my coaching clients. The first one is, if there's a lot of yogis in here, you're going to recognize obviously breathing exercises, which help balance the nervous system. I'm going to talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system for a second. As sort of, high performance, A-type personalities that live in Toronto. There's a lot of those. I'm not saying everyone in here is, but in Toronto, there's a lot of A-type sort of go personalities that are go-getters and high achievers, and all of that's awesome. Like I'm one of those people, and I respect that. But sometimes what can happen is because we're go all the time, we get trapped in this state of sympathetic overdrive. And what that means is sort of we're used to engaging so often with a high stress lifestyle that we don't notice that we're as stressed out as we are. It means the sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, or freeze part of the autonomic nervous system, is firing it's been firing for so long that it sort of gets trapped in a loop and just continues to fire even when you don't need it to fire. So because that may be true for certain people, and even if it's not true, even if it's, you don't have sympathetic overdrive, but you're just prone to anxiety and prone to, fear, balancing the nervous system through belly breathing can swing the pendulum to the other side. So deep, elongated belly breaths, things like square breath, for example, that's where you inhale for 3, hold for 3, exhale for 3, hold for 3, or 5, or whatever the count is. Something like doing that for 15 minutes or longer, breath driven into the belly, can help trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, digest, recover component of the nervous system, which then balances the autonomic nervous system as a whole and brings it into homeostasis. So a breathing exercise like belly breathing, for example, or square breath, is incredibly powerful for the mindset, because if your nervous system is out of whack, so will your mental disposition be. It's very hard to be living in a state of anxiety or consistent stress and keep our mind sort of calm and regulated all at once. It's not impossible, but most often what happens is we sort of just forget that we're in this state of stress and in this state of sympathetic overdrive, and then our mind just kind of spins out of control, and then it just creates this feedback loop of the mind having these unconscious thoughts that aren't helpful, that then triggers our mood, which then throws our nervous system out of whack. So anyway, when you practice belly breathing, it can cut or throw a wrench in the physiological response to stress and fear, which then allows us to have an easier time with managing our mind and choosing the thoughts we want to think versus being a bystander of our mind's out of control negative narrative. That was a mouthful. All right, next meditation exercise or option is creative visualization. And this is another one that helps build positive neurological pathways and helps us prep actually for desired outcomes. So visualization is this idea that you create I'm going to give you an example. There's many types of visualization. This is one example. You create an optimal outcome in your mind. Let's say you want to launch your business next week or in 2 months or whatever. Let's say you have this goal and you're like, I'm going to launch my business in 2 months. And you're terrified of doing that. What you do is you create an optimal scenario of you doing that. Okay, this is essentially optimally and ideally what it would look like if I was launching my business in 2 months. These are the things I would have in order. This is how I would feel emotionally, and so on and so forth. And you kind of paint this picture of an optimal scenario, and then you include what's known as a rich context story, and that's when you include the 5 senses within that optimal scenario. So you would create the scenario and you would go, in the moment of me launching my business, like what clothes would I be wearing? What temperature would it be in the environment that I'm in? Like literally physically, what temperature is it in the room when you're launching the program, or are you outside, right? If it's a fitness program. What am I smelling? It sounds really meticulous and kind of ridiculous, but it's important because the more senses that you can include, the more detail that you can include in this rich context story connected to your creative visualization, which is your optimal outcome, the more specific you can get with that, the more the body can't tell the difference between your visualization and a memory. So you've just now tricked the subconscious into believing this is a thing that you've actually been through before. And then when you actually prepare to go through it, it starts to become a little, like, I'm not going to say it's going to get easy, but it starts to become a little bit more manageable, or you become more tolerant of the idea of doing this scary goal that you're afraid, that every part of you wants to resist, right? It seems counterintuitive to walk towards the thing that you're afraid of. But this thing is, potentially going to better your life and create so much healing and knowledge for your community. So it's obviously in your best interest to walk towards this specific fearful event. So when you've tricked your body and your subconscious into thinking that this has actually been something you've been through before, you're more open to opportunities. So when an opportunity comes your way that might support this moving forward, you're not going to like shut down or freeze or say no necessarily. But it also allows you to take steps faster because you're like, I've been through this rodeo before. This ain't my first rodeo. So everything's in theory, right? Like try it out, see what happens. You have to practice it. It isn't just a one and done. Okay, I've created my optimal outcome and I was sipping champagne and I know what it tastes like and smells like and feels like. So now the fear's gone. It doesn't work like that. The fear will still be there. It's just learning to create scenarios and learning to implement resilience methods so that the fear loses its power over you. Okay. Last technique that I'm going to discuss under the meditation umbrella is mindfulness to build self-awareness. I think that there's sort of a huge misunderstanding about mindfulness and sort of what you need to be involved to be mindful, or who you think you need to be mindful, or what type of training you need to have to be mindful. Mindfulness is simply bringing your attention to your physical, emotional, and mental dispositions internally and externally from moment to moment. You can do that right now. You can do that while you're walking down the street. You can do that while you're smoking a cigarette or cooking dinner. You can be mindful at any given moment that you're mindful enough to apply mindfulness. It's an imperative exercise, in my opinion, because it's hard to bring intention to movement, which we talked about first, right? Put a motive behind your movement. It's hard to be intentional with the media that you consume, the lyrics that you listen to, and the way that television shows make you feel. It's hard to be intentional with all of these things and create these lifestyle changes if we're not even aware of what's working for us and what doesn't work for us, right? So practicing mindfulness is an imperative exercise as a resilience method, because it gives us the understanding and the ability to see what works for us and what's improving our health and what's actually hurting us and degrading our health. So mindfulness doesn't require that you need to be anyone. I think obviously if you're new to mindfulness or new to meditation, it can be optimal that you're in a room with no distractions and silence and maybe a candle, right? But those things certainly aren't prerequisites. You don't have to be on a specific cushion and have incense burning and things like that. It can be whatever you want it to be. That includes kind of all of this. Your life is up to you. Your routine is self-defined, and it's really a matter of you using trial and error. Investigate, see what works for you, see what doesn't, and then start to collect these ideas and jot down these things that create the routine that's best for you. This is just my perspective and my awareness that I've developed, and I thought that it might give you some helpful ideas. But certainly there's, like I've said all along through this workshop, there's many resilience methods that are available to us to manage our mental health, many that are very critical that I haven't mentioned in this workshop because I only wanted to focus on these 3 today. But yeah, everybody's wellness routine, everybody's resilience methods look different. Yours won't look different. Yours won't look the same today as they will tomorrow, maybe, right? They might look the same for 3 years and then completely change altogether. It's about self-awareness and knowing when to utilize and when to change and when to pivot and push. So that is awesome. Sarah says, thank you. Karen says morning pages. Is it morning pages or morning pages? Oh, that's a good question. She's asking about the spelling. Like, I always thought it was M-O-U-R, like morning, like you're morning something, but it could honestly be morning pages. I'll look it up. It's a very like well-known exercise, so I'm sure it would be on the internet, and like there's probably tons more information around where that exercise stemmed from. I know I got it from the Course in Miracles. That was an exercise that the Course in Miracles suggested, and my dad was going through the program and he passed that down to me. So that's how I found out about it. But there's a lot of people that use it, and yeah, it's an amazing tool. I hear a lot of people get stuck on the whole journaling thing. Like I love when people are like, man, you're so disciplined with journaling. Like you do it every day, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not disciplined with journaling. I love journaling. Discipline is like me drinking water. Like I should be drinking like 8 more glasses of water a day than I do. Like I have to force myself to do that. I don't have to force myself to do journaling. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when you start to implement these exercises and you show up without expectation, like like take away whatever you think it needs to be, right? Like you're not showing up to write a book right now. You're just showing up to allow self-discovery and to allow self-confession and allow gratitude or whatever's there for you to present itself with the information that you need in order to change what doesn't work for you and keep what does, right? But that's the number one thing that I want to highlight here is like, show up without expectations here. This is, you know, this is for you, and no one has to see it, and you don't have to share with anyone. And when you can do that, chances are you're going to see the benefit for yourself when you see it, right? And when you see it, you're not going to have to like discipline yourself to sit down and like learn about all these amazing like benefits that come from journaling. You're just going to want to do it because it's awesome. So that's what I have to say about that. Like the discipline might be set in place in the beginning before you see the benefit, but then you might not need discipline because you'll just see why it works and how awesome it is. Julia Cameron wrote The Artist's Way, and she has you do morning pages to release all junk. Yeah, like a brain dump each morning. Okay, yes, Paula, thank you for sending that message. So I actually think that so now that you're mentioning The Artist's Way, I think that it was The Artist's Way that my dad was working through, and then he passed the morning pages activity on to me. I think I got the books mixed up. So yes, The Artist's Way, I've been meaning to go through that one. I heard it's awesome, but yes, this woman, perhaps this is where this came from. I don't know if it's been circulating around before that, or if it came from her, but the exercise is certainly in The Artist's Way. That's awesome. Thanks for mentioning that. Thank you so much for having me come on here and talk about these powerful resilience methods that I've been including in my regimen. Once again, my name is Janey Brown, and you can find me online. Thanks, everyone.